Welcome to the Imagine What's Possible podcast. In each episode of Imagine What's Possible, we talk to experts here at Flint Hill who share their knowledge and practical insights on what you can be doing right now to actively support your child's educational journey. I'm your host today, Susan Chiarolanzio, Director of College Advising at Flint Hill School. I have almost 40 years of experience in college admissions. I started my career as an admission counselor at Gettysburg College when admissions recruitment required a paper map and coins to pay for payphones when lost while visiting high schools. Students completed their applications on typewriters or even hand wrote them. Obviously, the field of college admissions has changed dramatically, both for colleges and how they approach the task of building their class, and for the families who are often swept up in the frenzy of creating that perfect student profile. Today, we're joined by Associate Director of College Advising, Andrew Kane, to bust some common myths about the path to higher education. What should you be doing right now to get into college? It's the question every underclassman asks. Andrew and I will get into why focusing on character, habits, and resilience instead of building a flawless resume is the way to go. Okay, let's go. Welcome, Andrew. We often hear from 9th and 10th grade families, what should I be doing right now to get into college? How do you respond to that?
As you said, very common question, and particularly for 9th and 10th grade families, the big thing to say is the most important thing to be doing right now for college is to figure out how to do high school, do as well as you can in your classes, build relationships with your peers, your teachers, make connections in the community, and start figuring out what you're interested in, what you might one day be passionate about. It's very rare for a 9th grade student to know exactly what they want to do academically, personally, extracurricularly. And so that's what the early years of high school are all about, identifying those things and then seeking out further opportunities to explore them.
Great. When students or parents do ask you this question, what do you think they're really looking for or really asking about?
I think by this point, particularly within education, things are a little easier to kind of line up. There are certain paths one can follow to achieve certain goals. And I think when it comes to college, they're hoping that there is a set, kind of a path or a set of things that they can do that will guarantee certain outcomes, which is just unfortunately not how the college process works because the landscape is very complex and there's a range of schools. And so I think deep down they're a little bit worried because after high school comes college, and that's always going to be a bit of an uncertain outcome in the grand scheme of things. And they're hoping to find the right things to put their student on the path to whether a particular type of school or schools, or just make sure that they're going to be okay. And the reality is they are going to be okay.
Yep. Is there a difference between doing things to get into college and doing things to prepare for college? And what's the distinction between the two?
Absolutely. I think that we see this a lot with high school students. They're thinking about what will look good. I'm doing this thing because it'll look good on a resume, or this activity will seem more impressive than that activity. And students aren't going to get as much out of those things if they're not doing it because they want to. Then authentic engagement with their high school experience is really important, both inside and outside of the classroom. And so whether it's picking classes or getting involved in activities, if they're not connected to it, it's harder for them to go as deep. And then when you get to the college admission side of things, admissions officers are looking for authenticity in applications. And everyone in our office has that background, and it's hard to explain, but when you read an application that's not authentic, it just comes through. You can tell when a student hasn't done things because they want to, they've done things because they thought they had to, and it just doesn't resonate in the same way. Whereas being prepared for college is absolutely essential. And, whether it's how to handle longer classes or cumulative exams or just getting involved in a community that's going to immediately expand compared to the high school experience, preparing in all those different ways to be able to engage with the exciting and diverse opportunities on the higher education level is so much more important because they're going to get way more out of their college experience if they're actually approaching it from, I'm going to be prepared wherever I go to do as well as I can and succeed.
Yeah, I think today you see so much information out there about how to get in and not so much about how to stay there. So.
Exactly.
In the early years of high school, what matters more, perfect grades or building strong academic habits? And how should students think about challenges or setbacks when they inevitably happen?
There's a lot of different ways to think about that. I think there's a couple layers to it. The first is that there's something to be said for challenging yourself while also maximizing your success. And so sometimes students, when they come into high school, they want to do everything right away, get involved in all the activities, take the most challenging classes possible, and they overload, they stretch themselves a little too thin. And then that can have an impact whether their engagement in their activities isn't where they want it to be, their grades might not be where they want them to be. Whereas if they can think about how to pace themselves in some ways, take on an appropriate level of challenge that they can build upon, then a stronger performance across the board is always going to be valuable. I don't think students need to do everything all at once. When it comes to actually, building the good habits, that goes back to the preparation question. It's not just about getting into places. It's about how to do well, how to say, and so taking advantage of the opportunities to hone their skills. So a student might come in who already has an aptitude for math, and that might be where they challenge themselves and they take a more measured approach to their English or history courses so that they can develop those good academic habits. So by the time they reach their later years of high school, they can take on those higher level, more challenging courses and feel confident in their ability. Because the worst thing is when a student takes on a little too much and then they kind of lose that confidence in themselves and what they're capable of. Additionally, I've found, particularly working with 9th grade students and a little bit with 10th, there's a bit of an allergy to, for lack of a better term, failure. Failing is bad. And I think anyone who works in a school will tell you that failure is a growth opportunity. It's an educational opportunity. Sometimes you take on a challenge and it doesn't work out. How do you respond to that? How do you grow from that? That's so important because everyone hits those setbacks at different times in their lives and different points in their educational careers. And once they do, if they've had it before, they know how to grow from that as opposed to viewing it as a major roadblock or obstacle. And again, looking ahead to the college experience, those skills are going to be essential for successfully making it through college and what comes beyond.
And especially learning that here in a really supportive environment is very valuable compared to their next step. Okay. Do students need to have a passion project or know exactly what they're interested in at the start of high school?
Absolutely not. I think that is a big pressure point for our young people. They think they need to know exactly what they want to do. One of the problems is we have a very diverse and, the media culture, social media, all of that. They have so much access to information, and sometimes the exceptional stories get promoted in a lot of different ways, and they think that the exception is the norm. I'd say it's almost a little unhealthy to know exactly what you want to do or have a passion project when you're 13 or 14 years old. You're still figuring things out. I think about my own young teenage years. I definitely did not have that all figured out, and that's okay. I think it's better to, if there are interests there, find opportunities to continue to explore them that might lead to further growth and development in that area. But I also think it's okay to not know and to change your mind. Sometimes a 9th grader might be like, I'm really interested in, robotics. And then the next year they realize that they took a class or, they got involved in, say, the classics club, and that area has grown for them. And there's different ways for them to explore those interests. And I worry sometimes that students shut off opportunities because they think because I didn't do this, I haven't been doing this for years, I can't now explore this opportunity. And I think, again, going back to that authentic engagement is far more important than trying to identify a passion project and have it ready to go when they're so young.
Yeah. Do you think, aside from maybe focusing on one thing too early or putting too much pressure on themselves, are there other common mistakes students make when thinking about extracurriculars?
I think it goes a little bit back to the a fear of failure. They might say, I don't know if I should do that because I'm not good enough to go out for that sport. Or I've never done a play before, I'm not going to try out for the play, or things like that. Whereas sometimes those interests or nascent interests can turn into a big area. I think a common one is when students think about, their full course load, they might be mostly focusing on, their histories, their languages, et cetera. But, the fine arts is a really great area for them to explore different aspects of who they are. And sometimes that can, again, grow into really great, strong area of authentic engagement. And so I think when it comes to those things, it's mostly a fear of not doing as well as they could have, or being worried that, oh, if I spend time on this and it doesn't work out, I can't change. And really, high school is about that opportunity, similar to, it's an environment that is an area for them to explore these things, to make good decisions. And then ultimately, if they don't like something, there's more opportunities to explore a new experience.
You've touched on this a little bit already, but are there things that 9th and 10th graders should not be worrying about just yet?
I think on the highest level, they shouldn't be worrying too much about college. They should be focused on high school. I think it's very common to talk to younger people where they're already looking at the next step and forgetting that what they're doing in their high school is really important, and there's value to it beyond just because it will help them get into college. And so I think that's what's most important, is think about the community you're in right now and how you can really maximize your experience there. Don't think too early about the next step, because it can lead to students missing opportunities, or it can also lead to students, when a small thing happens, it feels seismic. They didn't get a particular grade they wanted to, or they didn't make varsity in a sport or something like that, and they think this has now kind of ruptured their entire experience, as opposed to it being an opportunity for growth, learning, reset, all those things. So I think focusing too early on the next step really can hinder the ability of a student to fully engage in where they are.
If you could give every incoming high school student, and maybe their parents too, one piece of advice about college, what would it be?
Oh, just one piece. So I think the big thing is the college process and experience and everything right now, I think, feels pretty weighty, and it doesn't have to be. I think it can take on a life of its own. It can become outsized, both in the high school experience, but also the implications of where you go and what you do and all those things. Whereas at the end of the day, there is a huge number of colleges and universities out there. They have outstanding programs and opportunities, and it's not about where you go. It's about taking advantage of the opportunities presented to you. So do that in your high school. When you get to college, do that there as well. But I think, again, it can take on this life of its own that really can, in some ways, take away from the high school experience. That is, when I think back on my own experience, and sometimes I see young people today, I'm like, enjoy where you are right now. Take advantage of that. Don't worry too much. It doesn't have to be this big deal.
And then I guess lastly, what would surprise most students and families about what colleges actually value?
I think it'll go back to that authenticity piece that I said a little bit earlier. Colleges are building communities, and they want to bring on students that are going to be additions to their community. Yes, of course, they're looking at grades, they're looking at test scores, they're looking at all those things, but they're more looking at a student who is able to, as best they can, as anyone can when they're 17 or 18 years old, know themselves and be able to express who they are and what they will bring to a community. And I think what happens sometimes, going back to what should I be doing right now, is when you're setting all these up, the little dominoes to flip down to hopefully get a particular outcome without actually engaging in those things, when it comes time to say, this is why I did this stuff in high school, this is what is important to me, students struggle. And that can be hard to see as an adult in a high school, but it's also disappointing because I know they may have missed out on opportunities. Whereas colleges want to see students take advantage of what they have in front of them and be able to express why they did it. And so doing that in a way that is meaningful to them just makes the rest come so much easier at the end of the process.
Okay, when families ask you about activities and things they should get involved with, it seems like they may wonder about, is the number of activities important or what? Like, people seem to want to show that they can do everything. What would you advise them about?
Sure. I think there's a couple different ways to think about it. You hear a lot about the well-rounded student in the college admission process, and I think that term has taken on a bit of a life of its own, and they expand it to everything. Whereas I think when colleges use that term, they're particularly thinking of students who are well-rounded academically. They've taken courses throughout their high school career that are in the core academic areas, as well as taking opportunity to explore areas that have grown in interest. Whereas the activity portion doesn't have to be, it can be depending on a student's interest, but it doesn't have to be quite so well-rounded. There are those students who might have some interests that are very focused. I think about maybe a student who's involved in athletics and they play on their school team and a club team and other things, and that takes up a lot of their time and they can't fill in as much. Or maybe a student who's involved in, say, theater, drama, where they do stuff at their school, they're involved in outside of things, and it just isn't as, again, their time isn't as available for other stuff. And then there are other students who have a lot of different interests, and they can sign up for various clubs and get involved in a way that allows them based on their time. There's no magic number, though. It's, I think that, again, families think you have to have this many or you won't be considered or it's not good enough. And it's really about the depth of involvement versus the breadth of activities. Any student can go to a club fair at their school and sign up for 15 clubs and go to one meeting every other month and fill out a resume that they do those things, but the engagement really isn't there. Whereas, again, a student who does a smaller number of things that they're really interested in and are able to engage in more authentically, again, explore their interests, grow those things that they might want to, whether it's get involved in outside or might align with what they want to study, are really important. And so it's also an opportunity for leadership in high school. I think that's another thing where younger students, they want to be leaders, which is great, but they have to get involved first and build those relationships. And so that depth of involvement allows for that opportunity to do that, as opposed to counting up, I have 10 activities, I have 15. That's what's important. It's about how much you were involved in, how you engage it, and did you take the opportunity to show leadership within that program, organization, or experience.
I guess I have another question kind of related. Since you're going to college to take classes and learn, why do they care what you do outside of school, outside of class?
Great question. And it's primarily because they're a community. Yes, first and foremost, every school is bringing in students. Can you do the work in the classroom? Are you well prepared and well equipped to not just survive, but thrive academically? But you're going to be living with other students in the residence halls. Colleges have exponentially more opportunities and experiences than high schools do. And so they want to know what you're going to get involved in. So when they're reading an application, they're not going to say, okay, they can do the work, but also, I can see this is a student who's probably going to engage with our student government opportunities. This is a student that cares about service and they can take advantage of the various service-based experiences and organizations. They're building communities where they want students to contribute and engage, and they want to bring in a lot of different students. It's not just all one student. They all want to study the same thing and get involved in the same things. They want that range of people, diversity of thought and opinion, and all those things that will make for a really robust and engaging academic and living community.
Thank you, Andrew, for sharing all of your perspectives.
My pleasure.